All right. Good evening, fellow Penn Staters. I see we have some attendees that are still coming through into this webinar. We'll give it another minute or so, and then we'll go ahead and get started for this evening. Good evening, fellow Penn Staters, and thank you for joining us. The Penn State Alumni Association would like to welcome everybody to tonight's Fun Night program. Live closed captions are available for this event. You can access them by clicking the closed caption button at the bottom of the Zoom video window and then clicking Show Subtitle. You may also customize your caption view by clicking the stream text link posted in the chat. We're live streaming tonight's presentation, which will be archived and available on our website after the event. Tonight's discussion, bees make more than just honey. Our guest this evening is Dr. Robyn Underwood, who is an Extension Educator of Apiculture, who has been working with and learning from honeybees for nearly 3 decades. Robyn conducts scientifically sound research projects to study beekeeper-applied questions. She then brings the results of the projects to beekeepers through extension products that improves the industry while making beekeeping a more successful venture. I would like to welcome Dr. Underwood.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, I hate hearing that I've been doing this for 3 decades. Makes me feel old. So tonight I'm gonna talk a little bit about what you probably already know about honeybees, and then some other things that maybe you didn't really think about before. So the entire talk is going to be about products of the hive. So we're going to go through and consider how bees make honey and how we get it out of the hive, the pollen that they make that perhaps you buy to help with your allergies, wax. Those are probably the 3 most common that people think about, but you can also collect venom and propolis, and you can actually get stung on purpose. Some beekeepers sell the bees themselves, and sometimes we are able to market royal jelly. So these are sort of all the things that we're going to talk about here in this short presentation. So I don't know if you've ever thought about what honey is, but it is basically nectar collected by the bees. And in fact, I've been looking at the definition of honey, and it's not always nectar. Sometimes it is plant sap or even the excrement of insects that drink the phloem of plants. So all of those things, if they're collected by bees and brought back to the hive, can be made into honey. All of them have in common that they are basically sugar water, and the bees collect them and add enzymes. They dehydrate it because nectar has quite a lot of water, and if you just set it in a bucket, it would definitely ferment, and bees are trying to preserve their food for the long term. When it is ripe, which means that it has less than 18% water, then it is capped over by the bees. So I tell people it's like putting the lid on the jar, save it for later. And honey is a super saturated solution, which means that it's so much sugar that it is preserved, and bacteria and fungi basically mostly cannot live in it at all. So if it is less than 18% water, it will not ferment and it will keep for a very long time. So when bees make honey, they put it into the honeycomb and then they cap it over. So my job as a beekeeper is to take the honeycomb back to my shop and remove the cap and get the honey to come out. We do that using what we call an extractor, which you can see here on the right side, that acts like a centrifuge. So you bring in each frame, you cut off a thin layer of wax so that the honey is accessible. Then you spin the frames very quickly and the honey comes out and goes to the side walls of the extractor. Gravity takes it down and then it can flow into a bucket or a tank or something else. That's the most common way that honey is extracted, and it leaves behind beautiful honeycomb that you can put back in the hive for the bees to reuse. Another way that is mostly used by, hobbyists that don't have a lot of bees is called the Destruct harvest. And so if you've ever sort of looked at stickers that show depictions of bees, they show this sort of upside down basket shape, and that is called a skep. And that is the type of hive that bees were kept in by humans before we had the wooden boxes, before those were really invented. And so inside of those skeps, and it's the same thing where bees are living in the wild in a cavity in a tree, they're building wax combs that are parallel without any wooden frame around it, right? So what you can do is just cut that off and basically squish it. So this is a real fun thing for kids to do, just squish the honey out to break open all those cells of honey and filter it down. So you can see here this super messy bucket that has wax and honey, and it's being separated by just gravity and filtration. If you do that, you're going to end up with pretty much honey still left in with the wax. It's not a very clean process. So at that point, then, if you put it in water and boil it, well, not quite boil it, but warm it up quite hot, the wax and the honey will both be liquid and they will separate from each other. And when it cools, the wax will be its own separate layer that you can pick up because it's a solid. When you go to buy honey, there are lots of different colors of honey, and that's absolutely because of the nectar that was collected by the bees to make that honey. So, you can buy orange blossom honey, but you can be assured that that was not made in Pennsylvania because we don't have orange trees in Pennsylvania. It was probably made in Florida, for example. There's, in this picture here, we can see clover honey. Clover is quite common here in Pennsylvania. We can make that. Sunflower, here's your orange blossom. Eucalyptus, well, that's not even gonna really, I don't think, be from the United States, etc. And for me, if this was honey that I was making, I would say that there's possibly knotweed honey. So Japanese knotweed makes a dark red honey. There is honey that bees make from spotted lanternflies, believe it or not, from their excrement. And then there's buckwheat honey, which is almost black. So in order for a beekeeper to collect these varietals, they have to be in a place with a huge abundance of this particular plant. They have to time everything just right and remove those boxes of honey in time before the next flowers start to bloom. So often, therefore, when you go to the store, you buy what's called wildflower honey. That means, the box was left over the season and these things sort of got all mixed together. They're all honey, but we're not exactly sure what plant it was, or it could be 10 plants all mixed together. Honey naturally crystallizes. So if yours does this, do not think that it has gone bad. It hasn't. It's just in a different form. All you have to do is warm it up in a hot water bath and it will go back to liquid. In fact, if you're putting it in your tea, who cares? It's just going to melt in there and be just like it was if it was liquid. Beekeepers sometimes market special honey that's like you can see here at the bottom. It's called creamed honey. And basically, this is very controlled crystallization. so that you have very, very, very small crystals, and they're so small that it feels smooth. It doesn't feel chunky like you can see on the right with those large crystals. So making creamed honey is a specialty where you start with small crystals, and then that makes more small crystals. And then it's a spreadable rather than a liquid type of honey. Beeswax is a highly valued commodity. It's a product of collecting honey anyway. I was telling you how we cut off the wax cappings, and you can collect that, melt it down, purify it. It's naturally this yellowy orange color. You can do various things to filter it and bleach it down to be quite white. But this is a special thing made by the bees by glands on their abdomen. So it's nothing that we can make ourselves. It's something that bees make using their bodies. I just wanted to point out that beeswax is a very natural and very clean way to, say, make a candle. So if you're buying candles at the store that are paraffin with fragrances, that's sort of contaminating the air in the surrounding area of that candle. But burning beeswax is absolutely pure. It does not contaminate the air at all. And by the way, it naturally smells really good. So if you don't want to have to melt it using fire or your stove, you can use solar energy. These are very common. This is a solar wax melter. So you put sort of your unmelted wax here, and the sun just heats it up enough, and then the wax melts and comes down into here, leaving behind a lot of impurities. So this is a really easy way to just throw it in there and forget it. And then you get your nice, bread pan full of wax. So what would you use beeswax for? I already mentioned candles. Candles can be dipped candles or molded. They can be very beautiful, but the wax is also useful for many other things. There are beeswax food wraps that can be used in place of plastic wrap. It's great as part of a furniture polish, shoe polish, like waterproofing your boots, for example. Some people use them in cooking. You can actually find, for example, like cookie recipes that have beeswax as an ingredient. They're used in health and beauty products, like soaps and salves and lip balm and lotions. It can be used as part of plant grafting. You can thread wax. You can use it to cover cheese. It's a really, really versatile product that is, highly valued. I would say if you were going to buy beeswax in bulk, expect to pay at least $10 per pound. So bees collect nectar to make honey as their source of carbohydrates. They also collect pollen as their source of protein and fat. So beekeepers can collect that and market it for sale. And what you can see what's happening here in the top left, we have a honeybee foraging at a flower. She is collecting pollen, and you can see it here in a ball on her back leg. So she has one of those pollen baskets on each of her back legs. You can see these bees here with 2 pollen baskets. And normally they just go into the hive and deposit that into a cell so that they can eat it and feed it to their developing larvae. But if you put a certain size entrance on the hive, it actually knocks that pollen ball off. So what you can see on the right is that the pollen balls have been knocked off of their legs for a few days, and it collected down below. So this is something that a beekeeper would do quite temporarily, because clearly the bees need protein and lipids. But for a day or two, you can go ahead and collect that, and then you can sell it. This particular picture shows a very uniform, all one color pollen. That means that these bees are going en masse to one particular type of plant. Often, however, they're visiting different plants. So there could be in here a whole rainbow of colors, from white to yellow to orange to red to purple to green and gray. All kinds of different pollens are collected from the environment. And if you've ever seen a jar of it at a store or farmer's market, it's usually multicolored. And that just means they're visiting different types of plants. It's quite a nutritious supplement to your diet. Normally, and I'm not an apitherapist or homeopathic medicine person. I really just know about the bees, but really it's suggested that you take it slow. Don't eat a lot of this at one time. Just take a little bit at a time and kind of ramp up in your supplementation. It's quite nutritious for you, and it has some health benefits potentially. It's an antioxidant and anti-inflammatory. It can act to detoxify. And if you very carefully get pollen locally, it can help with your allergies if you're allergic to that pollen that you get. So getting the right pollen from the right season is important to help with your allergies. By the way, the honey collected at that time also has some amount of the pollen. So that's why people, say that they eat local honey to help with their allergies. It's mostly because of the content of pollen. So moving on to another product of the hive, and that is venom. One way to get venom for yourself is to get stung. So there are people that do what we call bee sting therapy, and they usually go visit someone and they get stung in very targeted areas, very carefully. Of course, you have to be sure you're not allergic to bee stings in order to be able to benefit from this. Otherwise, you're going to be hurting yourself. So there are ways that you can buy your own bees and then sting yourself. Or if it's better for you, you can go to someone who will sting you. It is used by apitherapists to treat Lyme, especially the long-term Lyme disease. It's used for arthritis and Parkinson's disease. My experience, one time I met a man who had quite a deformed arm because of arthritis that was really bad in his elbow. And he told me that he just gets stung like 6 times on his elbow every week, and he doesn't have any pain. He said his doctor even talked about amputating his arm, but he thought he would have phantom pains then. So his solution, I think by accident, he figured out that bee stings make the pain go away. So rather than having an amputation, he gets bee stings, which seems like a much better thing to me to do. And it really helps him, and he feels much better. Please do not ask me any questions about the medical reasons for any of this, because I'm a doctor of entomology, not of medicine, so I cannot explain it. Venom, as you know, can cause swelling, so it's taken advantage of by some, cosmetic industry people who, you want to plump up your lips or plump up around your eyes so that you can't see the wrinkles. That's because of bee venom being in these products. So you can see here, it clearly says bee venom. So how in the world do you get bee venom? It's quite an interesting process. I don't know if you know, but if a honeybee stings you, she can only get away by ripping her body apart, which means that she dies. So her stinger is barbed and it gets stuck in your skin. She rips away and then leaves behind this poison sac that pumps and pumps and pumps the poison into you. She also leaves behind a pheromone, which is an alarm that says to her nestmates, hey, this is our enemy, go sting right there. So clearly we're not collecting this venom by getting ourselves stung. But someone somewhere invented this device here that is for Venom Collection. And basically, it's a glass plate with wires going across. And so when the bees go onto the wires, they get a little shock that makes them want to sting. And so what they do, their stinger comes out and the venom comes out, but there's nothing to stick into. So it's just a liquid going onto a glass plate in that case. And so the bee is not harmed. She doesn't die. She doesn't have her stinger ripped out because your skin is not barbed and your skin is not holding in the stinger, but the liquid is being left behind on a glass plate. So the beekeeper will just leave this on for maybe an hour a day and take it away, take apart the machine, and then you can scrape the venom, which has dried, into a powder and put it into a vial. And then that vial can be sold to, for example, the cosmetic industry or the medical industry for their own use. This is a super specialized thing to do. It's very rare that people do this. I think it's kind of hard to break into the market as well to get it sold, but you can fetch quite a nice amount of money from bee venom. So the bees themselves, as you know, are collecting nectar from flowers, pollen from flowers, they collect water, but they also collect what we call propolis or propolis. So propolis is plant resins that they collect from plants, and they mix it with saliva and some wax, and they use it like glue. So it sort of sticks all the hive components together. They also have a major preference for a certain sizes, like an exact bee space. So if there's any spaces that are too small, they will just fill it in with propolis. So that's what you can see here. So this is a plastic device with grooves in it that you put on the top of the hive before the lid. And the bees are like, I really don't like that spacing. A bee can't fit through it. I don't like it. So they just fill it with this plant resin, saliva, and wax mixture. So the beekeeper then gets a beautiful sheet of this stuff. And if you put it into the freezer, it gets quite brittle. And then you can just sort of twist and twist this plastic sheet and the propolis will fall off. So propolis is highly prized for its medicinal properties. There's actually research that shows that bees self-medicate using propolis. They put it all around the hive. If you find a natural hive, it's going to have a huge layer of this all on the inside. And some research has shown that sicker bees collect more propolis. So it has some sort of antimicrobial action in the hive. So the bees, it's not an accident that they're collecting this stuff. So we can also take advantage of this for medicine. It was quite interesting. You know, during COVID, all the beekeepers got really excited because a paper came out that showed that at least the propolis that was tested in that study at the cellular level is able to kill the COVID virus. So this is totally a lab kind of situation where they had cells infected with COVID and they treated them with this propolis and it killed the virus. So that's very promising. I'm not saying that it's going to cure COVID or anything like that, but you could use propolis as a throat spray. And if you're feeling sick, just spray it in there. It's not going to hurt you. It is quite medicinal. You know, it can help you treat strep or any kind of sore throat. So why not, right? Have it around. So what you do for that is you have your propolis and you have to soak it in some alcohol. So often people use Everclear, which is, you know, pretty pure type of alcohol that is also something that you can drink. Not a lot, don't recommend it, but it can help dissolve the propolis and you spray it into the back of your throat then, because propolis is quite solid. So you kind of need to get all the good stuff into a liquid form. And when you do that, it acts as an antiseptic, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and a detoxifier. Contains flavonoids. It's basically a superfood, can help with wound healing. And I can tell you that it actually tastes pretty good. It has a very interesting flavor. Your tincture, which is alcohol and propolis, add some honey to that, and it doesn't feel so bad to be taking that medicine. So another product of the hive is something that's very important to the bees, and this is royal jelly. So what you're looking at here in this picture, at the bottom, these are young larvae that are destined to become queens. So they're in a vat of royal jelly. royal jelly is the food given to the larvae, at least the youngest larvae, and it's actually made by a gland in the head of a worker bee. So a worker bee is a female bee that does, all kinds of jobs in the hive. She emerges as an adult and kind of matures, eats pollen herself, and these glands mature. And then she becomes the nurse bee for her little sisters who are larvae. So it's like a mother's milk. So they're not feeding the larvae honey or pollen, they're feeding them royal jelly. So it comes out of their mandibular glands, so kind of their mouth, they're like spitting this out by the larva's face, and then the larva is an eating machine. So you may or may not know that a worker and a queen are both female. They both come from a fertilized egg. And for the first 3 days of their life as a larva, they are fed only royal jelly. Then on day 4, if they're going to become a worker, they're fed a little bit of pollen. And that pollen is what triggers them to become a worker. If they don't get that pollen and they get copious amounts of this royal jelly, then their body will turn into a proper queen. So it's a really important evolutionarily for the bees to have this opportunity, right? So if they lose their queen, they can just take a young, like an egg that was going to be a worker, make it into a queen instead. So that's really critical for their survival. So in order to collect royal jelly, what you do is you start rearing queens. So that's what this funny bar is. So somebody, took a teeny tiny just hatched larva and put it in a special cell. And then it sits sort of vertical in the hive facing down. And the workers are like, oh, we need to make a new queen. Let's give them tons and tons of lots of great royal jelly. And then the beekeeper comes in and says, actually, I changed my mind. They remove the larva and then they take the royal jelly. So this is this high protein, sugary food that's really meant to be for larvae. And so you can take it and put it in a capsule for people to swallow as a supplement. It's very high in vitamin B. It can stimulate your metabolism and acts as an antioxidant. It's also sometimes found in beauty products. So there's various things that royal jelly can be used for. Beekeepers also could collect it for their own queen making process. So throw it in the freezer, and when you want to make queens, you can use a little bit of it in those funny cells that I was showing you right here, just to get them started. So sometimes a beekeeper isn't really that interested in making any of those products, but they're really good at making bees. So bees are reproducing all year long, and you can, in fact, sell them to other beekeepers. Overwintering survival over the past 10, 20 years has not been that really very good. We lose 30 to 50% of all the colonies every single winter. So there's always beekeepers that want to buy more bees, replace their bees, get bees to get in the hive that had bees last year, but they didn't make it over the winter. So there's many ways to sell them. But the most common here in Pennsylvania is as a nucleus colony. So a nucleus colony you can see here on the right, and this is a small colony. So you can see there's only 5 parallel frames that contains the queen, her young, and some food. And then there's a whole bunch of nurses, which are also the queen's daughters. So this is a great way to get a new colony started. Normally they're in a box with 10 frames, 8 or 10, depending on the equipment you use. So all you have to do is take out your middle 5 frames, put in these 5 frames with all these bees, and then the colony will take off from there. The queen will keep laying eggs, they will expand out, you'll have to add more boxes on top, and that's a great way to get started. Some people buy what we call a package. It's not really a product here in Pennsylvania because it's something that people here are interested in getting very, very early. So a package is just a mated queen and like 30,000 workers that comes in literally in a package. So it's like a a wooden box with 2 mesh sides so they can have lots of air. And then you just dump that into a hive with these frames. So, but with that, you're getting a mated queen and workers, but you're not getting any of the larvae or stored food or any of those things. And people want them very early, like mid-March, by mid-April at the latest. So if you want to get a package now, well, it's May 23rd. Nobody's selling packages anymore. So it's a package you can get earlier, but a nucleus colony or a nuke is a better start. Maybe they end up the same by the end of the season. Another thing that's very popular is selling queens. So here you can see the result of that, moving a larva into one of those cups, having them feed them lots of royal jelly, and then to grow full size. So these are capped queen cells, and a week from now, a queen will emerge from here. She'll be a virgin, she'll have to go off and mate. And when she returns and starts laying eggs, you can sell it as a mated queen. And so that's very, very profitable, and lots of people need queens because things happen. They want to take one colony, make it into 2, so they need a second queen, or they killed her by accident, or they don't like the way their bees are acting and they want to change the genetics. There's a lot of different reasons to want to buy a queen. So if the beekeeping is for enjoyment and you like working the bees, but honey is kind of heavy and a pain in your rear, maybe you just want to sell bees instead of selling queens. So you can see that beekeeping is a very diverse sort of hobby / trade. Lots of different things can be harvested from honeybee colonies. Everybody knows about honey, probably know about wax, but also you can collect propolis, pollen, bees for stinging, venom, royal jelly, nucleus colonies, and queens. So there's always something new to learn in beekeeping, and probably another product to be sold. I didn't even mention here that you can get paid to put your bees somewhere just to pollinate, and it's a temporary contract. So that's another way to make money. So there's many, many different ways to make some money in beekeeping. So with that, I'll stop sharing, and I'd be very happy to take your questions. I'm going to look. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, Robyn, looking into the Q&A, we do have a few questions here. First one I will mention is coming from Melinda in regards to the bees. Do they intentionally collect the pollen, or does this happen accidentally?
They definitely intentionally collect pollen and sometimes accidentally collect pollen. So the workers that become foragers, which by the way is like sort of their last job, there are definitely specialists looking for nectar and other specialists looking for pollen. Often the ones looking for nectar accidentally collect pollen. But it is very clear when they return to the hive, either they have this very full pollen basket or they have almost no pollen. So that kind of shows you the accidental versus purposeful collection. I see another question in the Q&A. It says, I would like to start beekeeping and would like to gather honey as part of that effort. What is the ideal number of honey collection frames in the hive to have a reasonably efficient honey extraction process? Well, the extractor that I showed you was quite a large one, right? It held probably 50 or 100 frames, but you can buy one that holds only 3 or 5 or 10. So I promise you, whatever scale you're interested in, there's going to be a device that fits the scale of your operation. So I guess the question is, how much honey do you want to make? If you just want enough for yourself and your family and to give it away as nice little gifts, you probably only need 1 or 2 colonies, right? If you want to be able to sell it at a farmer's market and have customers that come back to you and you don't run out, you're going to need more. My honey actually is sold at the Penn State Creamery. And last year I thought that I had made the perfect balance of how much they want and how much I make. And I was just told that 1 more order and we're out of honey. So it's a good thing the honey flows on. So yeah, it all depends on your goal. So I'm really sorry, but honestly, if you become a beekeeper and you take a beekeeping class, you're going to hear the funny joke about ask 10 beekeepers a question and you get 22 different answers, because it's always, well, it depends. Well, it depends. And there's a million different answers. So I'm really sorry. When a bee's sting is used for medical care, does the bee die? Yes, if it's bee stings therapy. No, if it's venom collected on the glass. So it depends how it's collected. Can the varroa mite winter over in the hive? A varroa mite, which for everyone's knowledge is a parasitic mite that spreads viruses. It's really the worst part about beekeeping. Varroa mites must have honeybees. So yes, if your bees survive, the mites can survive. If all the bees die, all the mites die. So you have to be careful also with your use of the words hive versus colony, because the colony is the bees and the hive is what they're living in. So the way you ask the question, can it remain in the hive over the winter? Only if there's a colony there for the winter. So I hope that makes sense. How does wind affect hives in high wind areas? Yeah, wind is a really bad thing for bees. For overwintering, one of the main things you need to do is give them a hive, like a wind block. Wind will kill colonies. It also affects their flight. So when they're foraging, it takes a lot more energy if it's very windy to get where they're going. So it can affect them year round. What is the current status of the African killer bees and how far have they progressed? There are definitely, we call them Africanized bees or African hybrid bees. They came to South America and were released by accident, and they've been moving north. They're definitely in, Southern California, Arizona, Texas. If you Google it, you will find a map. The scary thing is that they're definitely established in the South, and we in Pennsylvania are allowed to buy bees from the South. So there's a constant sort of risk that they'll arrive here, but you can be assured that they're never allowed to stay, because beekeepers are totally intolerant of mean bees. Like, we're doing it almost like for fun, and we don't want it to be a miserable experience for us, and we don't want anyone else to get hurt. And our bee law states that we're not allowed to keep aggressive colonies. So they always get euthanized, whether that's get rid of that queen and put in a new one, or the whole colony goes away. So they're in the southern US, yes. Do they come to Pennsylvania periodically? Maybe, but the way beekeeping is, we generally take care of it right away. How do bee colonies propagate naturally in the wild without human intervention? Great question. So right now it is what we call swarm season, and there are balls of bees hanging in trees. There's bees moving into people's, walls of their house. That is natural propagation without human intervention. It is totally natural for a colony to want to reproduce. And so if the colony makes it through the winter and that queen is from last year, they're very likely to swarm. So a swarm is that queen and about 50% of all the workers leave the hive and they go start a colony somewhere else. What's left behind is 50% of the workers and all the brood. So they have what they need to make a new queen. And usually the queen doesn't even leave until there's already queen cells ready to go. Like, new queens have been started, and then she'll be like, okay, they're going to be good. She leaves. So that is how they do it in the wild, and that's how they do it in managed colonies when beekeepers are not on top of things. If they get a little bit crowded, if there's more food coming in than they can gather, they will swarm. And that definitely happens in a cavity in a tree in the wild regularly, because it's usually pretty small. There's a question here about a particular type of hive. I personally don't use anything other than your traditional Langstroth hive, because I'm an extension educator, so I like to do what the people around me are doing. I can give them better advice. A Slovenian hive, I'm sure would do fine here. I mean, the one thing I don't like in Pennsylvania is sort of top bar hives, which are rather than growing up like the ones behind me in this picture, they grow sideways. And what it does is it allows wind all from below and the side and the top. And I feel like they don't overwinter very well. But a Slovenian hive is probably okay. At the community garden I belong to, there's an area where a handful of hives are located. Is there a max number of hives per area? There is definitely something to consider with stocking rate, we call it. And the problem is a lot of people consider like, oh, I own only a quarter of an acre, so I can't have bees. But bees have no idea what you own or who the neighbors are or anything about that. They will fly probably a mile from home in any direction to get food. So yes, we need to have enough flowers for all the bees that are there. We also want to consider having enough flowers that includes all those other bees, the native bees, the solitary bees, the ones that were here first. You know, honeybees were imported with humans, by the pilgrims, etc., multiple times. We brought them from Europe. They don't belong here. They're not native here. We don't need to save the bees. We don't mean honeybees. We mean these native bees, by the way. So yes, the bees usually tell the story though. So for example, if you have 3 colonies there and they never have enough food, well, clearly there's not enough food for 3 colonies. Or if they die over the winter due to starvation, you probably have too many colonies. So sometimes if you're not good at looking around and seeing what plants might be good for your bees, you can try it and see. The bees will tell you. So that is one way to know. Do you have a beekeeping class that you recommend? Yes, there is a Beekeeping 101 offered online by Penn State Extension. It's fully online course. You have 1 full year to get through it once you register. It's a really good class. People highly recommend it. I also would recommend looking at whether there are beekeeping clubs near you that offer an in-person class, because you probably can get some hands-on experience, meet other people in your area, and also maybe find a mentor who lives near you that will be willing to help you out once you get started. And I'm not saying that one is better than the other, and maybe you should take both. I'm part of a local club introductory beekeeping class, and what I've seen over the years is lots of people take it 2 or 3 times. Because the first time you take it, you are just bombarded with information, and then you get bees and you're like, oh my God, I don't know anything. So then you take the class again, and then it's like, oh, that makes sense now. I've seen this for myself now, and I can absorb now. So maybe start with Beekeeping 101 because you want to start now. Most of the local classes are offered like in January, February, March, because that's when we have time, when our bees are kind of just overwintering. And then it would set you up for getting your own bees in spring. If you're super eager, please just find someone to tag along with this year. Make absolutely sure that you love it. You don't mind sweating your butt off. You don't mind getting stung. Your body doesn't react badly to stings. Like before you invest in equipment and a bee suit and all of those things. So that is what I would recommend. I feel like I just saw a chat thing that had my name on it. Due to time, after a few more questions, we're going to have to submit them to my email. Oh, but I'm having fun. Okay. Let's see. Average lifespan of a bee is about a month in summer, maybe 6 months in winter they can last because they're just hanging out in the hive. Oxalic acid is a treatment for bees that you can use any time of year. It's most effective when there's no brood because you want to get the mites. You can only get the mites on adult bees. Is aggression due to genetics? Yes, that's one component. There are other components like a skunk is bothering them or whatever. So that's your answer to that. Are wild bees improving or are they still in decline? I would say that you have to take that on a species by species basis. Some are doing well, some are not doing well, some are staying the same. So I would recommend looking at the Lopez Uribe Lab webpage. We have a really great guy, Nash Turley, who does cool stuff with native bees. Hoping he's going to join Extension soon so we can have a whole native bee person as well, but that's just in my dreams. Okay, let me just take a couple more. I've kind of ignored the chat altogether. I've only been looking in Q&A. So I'll take like 3 over there. And then after that, I guess I'll take questions over email. By the way, is that a very fun like email that I got? Beekeeping@psu.edu. That's one of my aliases. I was very excited about that. Also, I wanted to mention, I don't know if you're still in Pennsylvania, but we just got a pollinator license plate. That is, the money goes toward roadside plantings for pollinators. I just ordered my personalized plate. I'm super excited. You should look it up. It's beautiful. There's a flower with a honeybee, a native bee, and a monarch. Very nice. Does snow affect a beehive? That's kind of a loaded question. Maybe you're also asking, does cold affect bees? So let's think about bees overwintering. A honeybee colony, their whole job in the summer is to gather enough food to last through the entire winter when there are no flowers. And then during the winter, they just literally hang out and they eat honey, shiver, and make heat. So I don't worry about the cold. The bees are fine. If they're going to starve, then they're not fine. If it snows, it can be a source of insulation and keep them warmer. It can be a source of water for them to get to drink. I don't worry about snow. Also, I often see hobbyists that are like, oh my God, it snowed and my bees don't have an entrance. I'm going to go out there and clear it. I never go clear mine. And every time I go back, it's clear. So I think that, the way the hives are designed and the sun and what the bees are doing really clears the entrance for them. So maybe it affects them, but it's not a big deal. Having hives be abandoned can be a very bad thing. So I know for sure in Pennsylvania, and I think every state, I hope, has what we call an inspection program where there are people hired by the state to go out and look at honeybee colonies and make sure that they're healthy. There's one particular disease called American foul brood that is absolutely devastating, super, super contagious. And we recommend that you literally kill the bees, dig a hole, and burn everything. It's really that bad. So having just hives sitting around that no one's attending, no one's checking, no one's inspecting, that's just asking for something like American foul brood to show up, spread around, and cause really big problems. So I do not recommend just leaving honeybee stuff laying around. It really needs to be well taken care of. So, okay, I think I'm going to stop there. I hope you learned something tonight. I hope you think honeybees are so awesome, because I'm so lucky to have this job where I literally talk about bees, read about bees, write about bees, and it's so fun. Thank you to Penn State Extension for giving me this opportunity. I'm really glad to be here talking to you guys, you alumni. So thanks for coming. And yeah, if you want me back to talk about something else with bees, just let me know. Maybe next year we can find another topic.
Thank you, Robyn. And again, for those that are on the Zoom, if you have any follow-up questions, please direct them, as Robyn mentioned, to her unique email address, I might say, at beekeeping@psu.edu. And again, want to extend a thank you and appreciation, Robyn, for your presentation tonight. And again, for those that are on Zoom tonight, please be sure to submit any follow-up questions you might have.
Give me a few days though, because my oldest child is graduating from high school in just a couple of days, so I'll probably not get back to you till next week. Exciting times.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you, Robyn, and thank you all for joining us this evening.
Thank you.